Good morning. This is Karen Delgado with Galatians.Six.Ten Educator, and I thought that I would do a little video on what I had posted earlier today. First of all, I don't know if we could get a shot of this in my lens or not, but you can see I'm out on a beautiful sunny day. I'm here in the city of Philadelphia, and I was sitting out this morning and I was taking a look at the sun rising, and I was thinking about how this is such a good example of being a 21st century teacher and using the materials that you have around you. We don't all have access to technology. We don't all have access to beautiful posters and beautiful learning materials. And some of us that are still maybe in a lockdown situation don't even have the time or the funds to go to the store and buy things. Maybe your parents don't have the funds to go and buy things to help with your science unit. Maybe you're trying to teach a group of children that are various ages and have various needs as far as the content that you're trying to teach in science. But what I would encourage you to do is to think outside of the curriculum. The curriculum may say that you're teaching sun, or that you're teaching photosynthesis, or that you're teaching light energy or energy in general, thermal energy. And look around and just see. And one of the things that I thought of this morning was the sun. So behind me, you can see the sun rose, and it rose where you were. If it's a cloudy day, you may not have seen it. If it was a stormy day, you may not have seen it. But the truth of the matter is, every day the sun rises. Every child in the globe has observed the sun rising. Every person throughout human history has observed the sun rising. This is not anything new. We don't need to go and buy a sun. We don't need to have one in our classroom. People don't have to have them in their homes. It's there. It's free. It's a free resource. You go out, you look up, and there it is. You see the sun. And so as a teacher, it's very easy for you to use this. And as a 21st century teacher, the difference between the old method of teaching and a newer method of teaching would be the idea of engaging your students in formulating their own questions. And if you've never done that before, it may take a little bit of doing, and it also may take some training on the listening of the other learners, so that when a child asks a question, he or she is not afraid that other students will laugh at them, or be made fun of, or be made to think that the question is irrelevant or somehow not as intelligent as another student's question. So you may just start with taking the kids outside and having them look up and ask them what they see. They may say sky that's blue, clouds, and eventually somebody's going to say that they observed the sun. And when they do, that's your time as a teacher to start to extrapolate or get them to ask their own questions. And so you may have some guiding questions. You may ask, what color is the sun? And then as soon as they see that they are free, that they are able to ask questions in a safe environment, the questions will come. How big is the sun? How far away is the sun? What is the sun made of? Is the sun really yellow? I heard that the sun is a star. Is that really true? I heard that the sun is going to explode someday and we're all going to die. Is that true? And so you start to have a list of questions. If you're able to, you could be recording them. You could be writing them down. If you have older students in a mixed group, you could have the older students jotting down the questions of the younger students. And a lot of times older students may think that the younger students' questions are a little bit funny, but what you as a teacher should do is know the answers to some of these questions yourself. And I did post a link to NASA so that you can easily find some of these answers, because the sun is a star, and the sun, scientists say, someday will explode. Will it happen tomorrow? No. Could it have been as part of a movie? Yes, it could have been. And that can lead you into a whole science fiction unit in literature. But some of the questions does the sun move? No, it doesn't. And so if a young child asks that, an older child may laugh and say, well, of course it does. It rises in the east, it sets in the west. And you can use that as an opportunity. Like, we shouldn't mock someone else's question because we may not know all of the answers. And so, but just jotting down and really, in the beginning, encouraging questions of any kind and discouraging any mocking of questions, rolling of eyes or acting like, oh, how stupid of a question is that? You want to avoid those types of things. So get these questions down, and that's really the beginning of your unit. Now, you as a teacher know what is in your curriculum. Maybe it's photosynthesis, maybe it's thermal energy, I don't know. But the sun could certainly be used as a starting spot for that. Maybe it's just pure astronomy that you're studying. Think about the other things, the other topics that you're learning in math. Think about the other topics that you are learning in literature. Are there stories about the sun that maybe at some other point in time you would normally use, but you could use it here instead? Obviously, if you're watching this, you have some access to technology. There are many different books at different levels. I'm sure there's a list on NASA under the kids section of books, fiction books as well as nonfiction books that are available via ebooks, downloads, videos where people are reading books to children. All of those can take this into the literature realm. Historical perspectives of the sun, ancient people's perspectives of the sun, their beliefs. We can talk about moral lessons, like the sun's an average star. It's an average size. It's of average intensity. And yet God uses the sun to give us life here on this planet. As far as we know, this is the only planet that has people on it. And our sun really enables life on this planet to exist. And so that's a biblical lesson that you can share with students, that something is something very average and not great, not bright, not whatever, but God has chosen the average star in the sky to keep the planet that he created and the people on it that he created alive. And so there's lots of different things, from a very simple thing as much as looking up at the sun. In below, I will also give you a link to an app called Skyview. It's a free app. You can just simply point it up at the sky and it will tell you what's there, and it'll give you information. If your kids have iPads and phones, they can download it as well if they have availability. If not, you could use it off of your phone just for your own information or to share with them in small groups. But one of the things that you'll see when you do that is the stars are up there all day long. It's just that our star is so close relatively that its light is shining so brightly relatively that it blocks out the light that we should be able to see from the other stars. And so at night, when our sun is out of our view, those other stars are able to now shine. But they are up there, they don't disappear. The sun isn't moving, the stars aren't moving, it's the earth that's moving. And that can take you into a whole other lesson, even from a biblical or a moral point of view, of how things aren't always as they seem. It seems that we're still and the sun is moving, but that's not the way it is. And so those are some lessons that, just as you talk about these things, you can share with your students. Be a learner, be willing to think about some of the questions ahead of time, get some of those answers ahead of time. So the other day, somebody asked me, what is a digital learner? So a digital learner or a digital teacher or digital literacy is not simply the ability to be able to use a computer to find information, but digital literacy is the ability to use the computer to find relevant and reliable information to answer the questions that you have asked. So as a teacher What I am doing right now is I'm teaching you digital literacy. I'm not giving you answers. I didn't tell you, well, I may have told you a few things about the sun peak and medium star, but I'm not telling you everything. I'm telling you where to go to find the answers. I'm giving you websites that you can go and find the answers. And so that's digital literacy. Teaching digital literacy is you as a teacher showing students, giving students the tools they need to find the answers to the questions that they asked. And that's the difference in 21st century learning. You're not giving the kids a list of questions that you've generated. You're giving students the list that the students have are a list of questions that they have generated. And the funny thing about this is that often they are the questions that you want them to answer. They are the questions that are in your curriculum that somebody in the Department of Education decided that that's what children should know. The beauty of it is often students will ask questions that take them beyond what is required. So I know a concern is always, well, will they be ready for common entrance? Will they be ready for the whatever test it is that your community gives to measure the amount of knowledge students have? And the thing is, when kids ask their own questions and find their own answers, when those tests come around, they will remember the answer. If they memorize a bunch of answers to questions that you asked that did not come from themselves, it's less likely that they're going to remember them on a test. If they are a good test taker, they will remember them for the test because they will have crammed the night before. But after that, they will not. Now, I have students who are now adults that come and tell me that they still watch the sky, that they still look for certain constellations that we learned about in my class, that they are teaching their children. I have people text me, email me, send me pictures of the moon, which is another, maybe we'll talk about on another day, of just observing the phases of the moon. But these are things that are part of our everyday lives. They're things that we look at and we just never really think to question them. There's so much more that you can learn from the sun. I know many of you right now are interested in STEM, which, if you don't know, is science, technology, engineering, and math. And so studying the sun, once you find out some things about the sun, you certainly experience the warmth of the sun, which is a whole other study of thermal energy. If you're studying light energy, it's the infrared portion of the electromagnetic spectrum that is keeping us warm. There are animals that respond to infrared differently than other animals. There's technology that uses infrared light, which is called night vision. And then, of course, if you are interested in having the kids do a project based on the sun, there's everything from building a simple sundial, which certainly can involve math, measuring angles, put a stick in the ground and see where the shadow is at different times of the day, take a record of that. Older students can measure the angle, calculate angles. You can measure the length of the shadow. So many different things that you can do. If you're keeping records, that takes you into statistics, and that's taking you right into JSS in secondary school. So it can be as simple as something, sticking a stick in the ground and just a young preschool child taking a look at the shadow, moving their body to make their shadow shorter or longer, using their hands to make shadow puppets, things like that. But then it can be taken all the way up to the higher levels of learning as well. So if you have a mixed group, especially over the summer, if you have a summer program where you're working with families that have different age groups and you're trying to kind of keep one topic going, you certainly can use something like the sun as your basis, and then from there just keep going. Something as simple as taking a look at the way in which artists have rendered the sun, different cultures, different areas. Some artists have chosen to do very realistic pictures of the sun, where others are very, very abstract. The sun has been a symbol for many cultures throughout the world, and so you can get into some global culture as well as local culture, depending on the age group. Literature, the same thing. You can certainly getting back to STEM, I'm sorry, I got off track. With science, technology, engineering, and math, there's certainly plenty of things out there if you as a teacher need the resources of how to build a simple solar oven that can literally cook something. Melting chocolate is one thing that works. Using, if you have magnifying glasses, you can do that. You don't need to. Foil, pieces of foil. There are ways to make solar lights using water bottles, if you Google that. Solar ovens with a simple cardboard box where you can actually cook food, cook sausages, cook other things. You'll see that there's so many of them online. ScienceBuddies.org, I'm sure, has some directions, and these can all be adapted to the resources that you have. You don't need fancy equipment. You don't need to have real science lab equipment. So much can be done with just trash, things that would be normally thrown away, discarded, things that are, I'll tell students to bring, go clean your room and bring things in. A simple bowl to hold something lined with some silver foiled paper, or the foil lining that sometimes packaging has, can be used to reflect light onto a food source. Certainly solar power is something worth exploring, entrepreneurial. It would be kind of the answer to many developing countries' electricity problems. If you're watching, all my friends in Nigeria are watching, you know that this is a major problem of the country. What an amazing problem to solve would be the generation of electricity in the country. Certainly solar panels on individual houses are something that's already in existence, but the cost of it is great. So that whole engineering of how to get something like that built to market and then into the hands of the general population, that would be affordable. But can you build something that you could just use today in your home if the power goes out? So those are things that kids can explore from that end of it. But really and truly, just about every subject that I can think of, including music, there are songs that deal with the sun. There's certainly language arts where the sun is used as personification, used to describe warmth, used to describe God. Jesus is the light of the world. In him is no darkness. Jesus is often referred to as the sun, S-O-N, as well as S-U-N. The sun generates everything that we need for life. So often that is why a lot in ancient cultures you see people worshiping the sun, because they realize that it is the sustainer of life. And so from anything from the astronomy end of it into the high physics, electromagnetic spectrum, the sun affects what happens here on Earth. It can interfere. It's called solar weather, different than what we think of weather, but the sun is very active and can interfere with our satellites and different things here on Earth. And so there's just so many things that just taking the simple thing as looking up as the sun can then be taken when you were taking a look at teaching using the 21st century methods of teaching, that you can incorporate and build huge integrated units around them, or keep it as simple as a simple lesson. And remember that your 21st century teaching skills boil down to the 4 C's of creativity, collaboration, communication, I'm forgetting the last one. It'll come to me. But certainly When in questioning, your students are communicating with each other. When they are seeking to find the answers, whether they're doing it off of your phone, whether you've printed off information that they can share and read, if you have books that they can look things up in, even if they're just listening to you tell the answers and jot down the answers, they can just work in small groups, in pairs. Sometimes that's called pair share, four heads together. There's all kinds of little buzzwords that are used for these types of activities, but that certainly is collaboration. When they find out their answers, to put their answers together and then communicate the answers to their questions back to the larger group is another way of communicating. Putting together a full presentation of all the information that your students have gathered and doing something for the parents is an even bigger form of communication. If you have technology, use it. If you don't, that doesn't mean you can't do this. And I think that's really my biggest message that I want to get out, that I think it's a big misconception that 21st century learning equates using technology. Technology is a way of doing this. It's one of the many tools available to you as a teacher, but it's not the only way, and it can certainly be done 21st century learning where students are encouraged to question and find the answers to their own questions, solve problems for needs that they see, to seek after knowledge that they are interested in. Those are the premises of 21st century teaching and 21st century learning. Technology is just a means to make that happen. So don't put this off thinking, someday when my school gives me a laptop, someday when my kids have technology, then we can do something like that. But for right now, this is just something that big money schools do, or schools in the United States or the UK do. No, it's something that every single teacher can do. It's something that every good teacher has done since the beginning of time, because good teachers have always recognized that students have different learning styles, that students learn best when their questions are being answered, that students learn best when they're in a safe environment where their questions can be asked, that their questions are valued. These are things that good teachers have always done. So don't be discouraged if you don't have all the latest, greatest technology. Believe me, here in the United States, we don't have everything either. Of course, there are some schools that do, and I'm sure you see pictures on the internet. You see these wonderful schools that have everything, but there are schools here that don't have. And I've been around this is my 40th year of teaching. I taught like this prior to having technology. Technology has made it easier. Yes, it has made it so much faster to find answers and help direct students in their digital literacy to be able to identify sites that are reliable, that can answer their questions and send them to the right sites so that they're not wasting their time on Google finding all kinds of things from wackadoodle, crazypeople.com answers, but that they're going to reliable sources like nasa.gov or other .org sites and using digital literacy to answer their questions. But that certainly isn't the only way to do it. So think about this. Think about it as you go through your day, no matter what it is that you're touching, you're eating. Yesterday on IG, I talked about food chemistry. As I was eating my breakfast, I was looking at it and just looking at all the science that is there in just one plate of food. So you can really do it with clothing. Anything that is of interest to your students, you can bring it in to your science. Science is everywhere. It's everything. Everything is chemistry. Anything that's life is part of life science. We live on Earth, so that's all of Earth science. So no matter what it is that you're doing in your day, there's some connection to what it is that you're teaching. And as you listen to your students talk about the things that they're interested in, the things that make them go, wow, the things that make them kind of like, I wonder. Those are the things that you can jump in on. And I'm sure if you just, once you start doing this, you will see how easy it is. It really is not difficult to make these connections. It's just we're trained to be so decompartmentalized that this is language arts or English literacy, or this is math and this is art, and art and math have nothing to do with each other, and art and science have nothing to do with each other, but they do. God himself is the master scientist and master creator, and just in that alone you see the connection between art and science, highly connected. And over time, I don't know why people sort of just put them on very separate levels, and for the sake of trying to get things done, and maybe in the Industrial Revolution age of just trying to trim back time and get things accomplished, the mindset has kind of changed a little bit. But really we're going back to a time where we really need to be thinking, we really need to be solving our own problems. And so if you've ever heard anyone talk about 21st century learning, it's talked about how we are preparing students for jobs that we don't even know will be in existence. We have no clue about the types of jobs that will be there. We have no idea the types of problems that these children will be asked to solve. If nothing else, we just saw this with, and we're still in this pandemic time period. Who thought? No one was prepared for this. And so we can see that these are the kinds of things that are just going to pop up out of nowhere, that are going to require students to have good thinking skills. Critical thinking, that's the other C. Critical thinking skills, creative ways of solving problems, creative ways of communicating, like all of you teachers have been doing through this pandemic. How can we get this information to our students? How can we teach differently during this pandemic? Those are the kinds of things that you've been called upon to do. And that is being a 21st century worker. It plays into being a 21st century learner. And as a teacher, 21st century teacher, are teaching these skills, and they are teachable. It's not a matter of listing them out and writing them on the board and defining them and having students copy the definitions. It's giving the students opportunity to think critically. It's giving students the opportunity to collaborate with each other and to collaborate with you, be part of the classroom, be part of the learning environment, be a interactive part of it, being able to communicate what they have learned to each other, and then to be able to creatively present it as well as creatively solve the problems. Something as simple as giving a kid a lump of clay and just letting them have at it is really critical thinking. That's how you teach a child to think critically. You just let them. You let them think. You let them explore. You let them come up with questions, and then you guide them to find the answers. So it's a little bit different way of thinking, but it's not as hard as you might think, and it does not take the resources you may have been led to believe. Everybody wants to sell you something. Everybody wants to sell you kits for STEM. You can do STEM with junk in the backyard. You don't need to be buying STEM kits from a company. That's just something very within the last few years has even come around. But you just need to be able to understand the mindset of what it is to be a 21st century teacher and what it is to be a 21st century learner, and then put those two things together. Look around you, any day, everyday things. Send me questions if there's a particular topic that you would like me to talk about. Today I just mentioned the sun because I happen to see it. You want to talk art? Audrey, most of you, if you follow me, know my love for Audrey. I don't have my scarf on today, it's hot. But if you saw my pants are Audrey. That's an entire science cultural unit that could be explored in a summer program. Just anything of interest to anyone. Hair extensions, fake hair versus human hair. Soccer, what is a soccer ball? What is it made of? Why does it work? Why is there air in it? How much pressure of air is in it? Anything that your children are interested in can become a learning opportunity for them. So have a good day. I hope this was helpful. Take a look up. I'll try to post those links. Look back at the previous things that I wrote today on the sun in particular. I put some links there as well. And have a good day. Keep looking up. Keep thinking of ways in which you can engage your students in active learning.